Okay, so the application ran properly, and you can see that these are actually working, and the URL is actually loading. So this is the URL. Okay, so this is the Flutter application running on iPhone 13 Pro. So this is the starter counter template that Flutter gives. So I didn't really change anything on this starter project. So you are actually seeing that all of the comments are actually added, and I didn't really edit anything on this project. So let's at first add the dev dependency and the dependencies. So I'm just going to be copying everything from my sample project. So you can actually get the codes from the GitHub repository that I provided. Check out the description to learn more. So these are actually the dependencies and the dev dependencies. So let's talk about this. So the first one is the auto route. So we're using auto route to handling the navigation in our application. So the second one is the Cupertino icon. This is actually really the standard of any Flutter application. And the third one is the Flutter SDK itself. And on line 34, it's the Flutter Bloc. So you're seeing that I'm using the new version, that is the Flutter Bloc 8.0.1. So the next one is the glass morphism. So we're basically using this package to get a frosted glass effect on our UI. You'll see what I'm talking about. So the next one is the HTTP package. So we're using this package to get the API call. And the last one is the URL launcher. So you'll see some URL in this object. So basically there will be a button to launch the URL into a browser. So our dev dependencies are a lot bigger than you might be expecting. So the first one is the auto route generator, and this is actually required for the auto route package so that we can actually generate our routes. So the second one is a build runner. So we're going to be using build runner to generate our custom data classes, or the freezed packages and everything, routes and everything. So the third one is the equatable. So we will be using equatable to actually compare objects to objects, and this is the Flutter lint. So this is actually standard in Flutter packages nowadays, and this is the most important one. So we're actually using freezed package to generate the data classes. So we need the freezed annotation, JSON serializable, and JSON annotations as well for the generation of data classes from our JSON packages. Sorry, the JSON result from our API. So if you save this, it will be getting every package. So Flutter pub get is running here, you can see, and it will show an output. Okay, so this took a while. So that's it for the packages. Now let's get introduced to our API. So on the screen, you're currently seeing the sample results of our API. So you see that there are some objects that is returning, and it's in a list. So if I go to the raw structure, you'll actually see that there are plenty of items in this list. So we're really going to be iterating all of this list to make a data model of this custom object from this JSON. All right, so now we're going to be generating our data classes from the JSON objects that we're getting from the API. So let's make a models folder inside the lib directory and create a file named datamodel.dart. Okay, so let's give it a name actually. So the name should be data model, And to generate the classes, that's because we're going to be using freezed package to generate the data model. So let's first import freezed annotation. Then we have to give it a tag freezed. So data model with underscore dollar data model. So that's it for the class name. So in freeze, you don't really have to make a constructor or anything. You have to write a factory. So let's give it a name, factory, and it should be data model. This is actually a type of constructor. So we're going to be using this equals to underscore data model. So that's it. So inside this, we have to actually give the variable names, and we have to look at the keys over here on the JSON. So this is the integer type, ID, this is string. All of these are actually of string type other than this ID and users. So I'm just gonna copy, and you can actually copy this from our GitHub repository as well. So that's about it. One thing to mention is that we actually have to make another factory function. That's because we're going to be converting from JSON to a data model object. So data model dot from JSON. Now it should be of type map string and dynamic, and it should be JSON and underscore dollar data model from JSON, and it should be JSON data model from JSON. All right. So to generate the package, we have to run a command. So we're going to be using the build runner, as I said earlier. So let's make it big, and command or control J to open this pop-up. Okay, so you have to run, and I actually forgot to mention this. You have to add a part over here. So make sure that the part is actually named similar to this. So my one should be data model dot freezed dot dart, and the other one should be part similar to this, but this is actually for the JSON conversion. So let's save this, and I think we're good. So the tag is added and constructor is added. Okay, so Flutter, so Flutter pub run build runner watch. So it should be delete conflicting outputs. So it's going to take a while to generate the build script. So there is actually a warning message. It's saying that JSON serializable on lib model data, and you're missing a required dependency on JSON annotation in the dependency section of your pub spec with a lower bound of at least 4.0. So let's check. So I actually added it on the dev dependency. That's why it was showing a warning. All right, so I've moved the JSON annotation from dev dependencies to the dependencies section, and I think it will be good. So let's run that again. All right, so it's actually done. And you can actually hide this by typing Command J or Control J. And let's go to the freezed. So it actually generated every functions that you're seeing over here. All right. So we're actually done with the data model generation with freezed package. Now we're going to be seeing how the API is actually calling from our Flutter application. But before that, we have to implement the blocks. So that's because we're going to be using a custom class to call the API, and the thing is that we're going to be using a repository, and the repository is going to be sitting inside our block. So let's get to the building of block. All right, so let's make a folder over here, and it's repo, and you can name this game data .dart. So actually, let's rename this to where is that? Actually, let's rename this to the games repo. All right, so it's actually understandable. All right, so so it's going to be using the HTTP package from our dependency section in the YAML file. So let's rename games repo. Oh, we have to import the HTTP package as well. So package HTTP as HTTP. All right, so let's make a function. So as we've seen earlier in our API result, that it's actually giving us a list of some data model class or objects. So it's going to be of list data model, and it should be of type this. That's because if there is an exception, we're going to handle that, and we're going to be returning null from here. So let's name the function games data or something like that, whatever you want. There's going to be an asynchronous function, and let's actually copy the URL at first. So the URL is this. You can actually find the URL in the description, obviously. So so it should be final result await. Let's call the API using our HTTP client .get. So this should be the URL, but there is a message saying that it's actually a string. The argument type string cannot be assigned to the parameter type URI. So we have to convert our URL string to an URI. So URI dot parse, and it's taking a string. So the string is the URL variable over here. So this one. All right, so we have to check the status code, obviously. So if the result dot status code not equals to 200, then that means that there is some error happening, right? So we're just gonna return null, and I'm not going to be handling any exception, but you can actually see that we're going to be implementing the error state inside our block. So else, we know that it's going to return a list of items, like this list of items. So it has 93 items, so 1 2 3 4 5, that's about it. So let's get an iterable instance. So it's going to be models JSON decode, so it's result of body. So let's make a list at first. So data models, so let's make it an empty at first, and let's iterate models, and you're actually seeing that every model instance is over here, and this is of type the data model. So let's make an instance data model is equals to data model from JSON, which we made earlier. Sorry about that. So this is actually an instance of the data model class that we actually generated with the freezed package. All right, so we're going to be adding this data model on this data models list, and after the for loop, let's just return the data models. All right, so our repository is completed, so that's about it for the GIMS repository class. So now we're going to be handling the blocks, and you're going to be seeing all the events, states, and the block class as well. All right, to actually generate the blocks easily, you can install a package called Flutter Bloc. Was that Flutter Bloc or just block? Let me see. Okay, so this one. So if you right click over here, you're going to be seeing some option to make a block, but I actually disabled it. That's because I wasn't using block some days ago, and you can actually see that by enabling that extension, you will see a option to make a block or a new qubit. So we're going to be using a block, so let's make a new block, and let's give it game or something. So what should be the game? So let's just make a block, so you can actually name is game data. So it will be making a folder, as there wasn't any folder block, so it made 3 files over here. So the first one is the game data block. This is the core block, which is actually extending this, and it is actually using these 2 files over here. So you're saying that this is the part of game data event and game data state. So what is an event and what are actually the states of the block, right? So as I'm writing the codes, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So let's get to the state at first. So so the state actually initialized with this game data initial. So this actually means that the block is instantiated with this state. So it might mean that it actually depends on how you're handling the data. So if you go to the so let's open the all of this. So if you go to the game data block, you see that there is a state. So this is the game initial state. So if you command click or control click over here, it is going to be navigating you on the game data state. So let's make some object extending to the game data state. You'll understand what I'm talking about in a bit. So there might be a loading state. So this is actually it means that the game data is loading from the API. So we have to show some kind of progress indicator that the data is loading. Game data loading set. So I always use the state word. So that's because sometime you see that you're getting confused with the event and the state. So save that and the error will go away. This will actually be extending from the game data state. Alright, so this is actually loading the data when the app is actually loading, so that state. So after the data is loaded, so there is another state, right? The game data loaded state. This is similar, so extending the game data state. So our game data loaded state is going to have some data, right? So that's because the data is loaded, and basically we're going to give some data to this state. So let's say that final list of data model, let's just say API result, and generate the constructor. So if you don't have this, you can actually install an extension, Dart data class generator. So after you have installing this, you'll see in the pop-up, so generate the constructor. All right, so that's about it, and there might be some sort of error, so let's make that as well. Game data error state extends game data state. Okay, so we're actually done with the game data state. So that's about it for our state file. So let's go to the event file. So what sort of event might there be? So we can actually make an event called load game data event. So game. So this is actually saying that load the games from our API. Game data event. You'll see what I'm talking about. So under this on function, we're actually implementing the whole block. All right, so let's remove the comments first. So in this line, you'll see that it is actually a event, and this is the emit. So this is of type emitter. Basically, we're going to be emitting states by looking for the event. So we have to make some conditions. So if the event is this, we're going to emit some state. Okay, so if event is game data, actually not game data, the load game data event, which we made here, load game data, and so basically saying that, okay, so there is an event, load the data from our API. So So at first, when the app is actually calling the API, we have to emit the game data loading state. So to indicate our user that the data is actually loading from our API. So inside of this emit function, we have to pass a state. So we have a loading state. And after that, you can actually call our, the repository. So we'll have to insert a game repository instance and generate the constructor. So basically we're going to use this games repo object to call the get games data. Okay, so this is going to be an asynchronous function. Await, and let's handle this. So list of Datamodel, and let's rename this API result is equals to this. Okay, so that should be of type null also. All right, so as we have seen on this function, that if there is some kind of an error, the API does not return the JSON result. So we are actually returning the null. So let's check it first. If API result equals to null, then we have to emit a state that there is some sort of error. So to handle that state, we've made game data error state. So else, we're basically saying that the data is loaded. So game data loaded state, and this is actually asking for our API result, which we're passing to over here. Okay, so we're actually done with our block. Congratulations. So that's about it. So we have made the block, game data block, event, and the state. But the thing is that we didn't really apply in our main function, right? We've made the game repo, the models, and the block, but we didn't actually implement in our main function. So let's implement in the main function to actually call the API and get the result. Alright, so now we're going to be injecting the block in our Flutter application. So I'm not going to use this. So let's make a folder over here with our title as screens. So let's name it landing page. Okay, it should be landing page.dart, and landing page and scaffold. So let us leave right as it is. So we're going to use the auto route, but let's actually use this. Let's show you the emulator. So what is actually happening over here? So where is that? Debug show check mode false. So it's going to be it's going to disappear, and we have to instantiate the block. So let's inside the my app. So let's just wrap with block provider. So import the package, and let's set the type game data block, and here it should be game data block as well, but it's asking for a positional argument 1 expected but 0 found. That's because if we go over here, you're saying that it's actually asking for a games repo object. So let's pass that games repo, and it should not be const. Okay, so it is instantiated, but you'll see no changes happening on the application. That's because we're not actually using block builder. So we have to use block builder to build the screens, or actually setting the states. So we have to make some changes on the material app. That's because we're going to be using the auto route. So we're gonna do it later, but as of now, let's actually get to the landing page. So here you'll see that I did not do anything. So on the landing page, we are going to be implementing the block builder. So let's wrap with where is the block builder? The first one. Okay. So wrap with, why do I? Okay, so block builder, it's going to be game data block. So import Flutter Bloc and import the block file as well. So we're not going to be returning scaffold over here. So we have to check at first that what is the state. So if state is game data initial, so that means our block is just instantiated. So we'll have to add an event. So basically say into our block that load the game data. So context dot read, so say the type game data block dot add. So it is actually expecting to get an event. So if I say game data event, so this is the load game data event. Okay. So I'm not going to just say return const circular progress indicator, and that's about it for the initial state. So let's check if the state is game data loading. So if it is of loading step, return the const state is, sorry, I made a mistake over there. So else if state is game data loaded state. So let's just say that, okay, let's not make that. Let's just return a text saying that the data is loaded. We're going to update that, don't worry about that. So else if there is an error, so basically game data error state, so return that something went wrong. It's up to you how you are handling this type of state. So let's just return const text error, but it's not gonna come here. So that's because there are only certain state. So let's save that, and you have to restart the application. Okay, so you saw that there is a big circular progress indicator, and so that will actually go away. Don't worry about the big circular thing. So just add a scaffold and it will go away, don't worry. So let's restart our application. So for a second, I guess that's a less than a second. So there was a circular progress indicator. So let's just wrap with center. It's going to be all right. So let's restart our application, and the circular progress is going to be sitting over here. Okay, so it is actually saying that the data is loaded over here. So let's wrap with center. All right. So it's basically saying that the data is loaded, and what if, so I'm gonna copy a function which is going to be rendering the design. So let's you can get this from the GitHub repository, don't worry about that thing. So import the data model. So don't worry about this one, as we didn't actually implement the auto route. It's gonna throw an error. Okay, so if I restart this, and I have to pass here, game data is loaded. So this function, and this is actually expecting the API result, that is the list of the data model object. So to get the object state.api result, so this is actually coming from the game data loaded state. So it's saying that API result, this is the list of the data model. So let's save that. So these are the data which is coming from the API. So let's make some changes. Let's set the brightness to dark, and the scaffold background color to pure black. Sorry, colors.black. All right. So basically what we did was get the data from API and load this data with the block repository. And what I'm trying to do is, if the user clicks on any of the cards or these containers, they will be navigated to the another screen which will show some sort of data on a basically the details screen of this game. All right, so to implement that, we have to make use of auto route. That's because we're going to be using auto route to navigate on the routing of our application. All right, so to make the use of auto route, let's just say that there is a folder named routes, and you just say custom router.dart, and you have to add some things over here like part. You'll understand what I'm talking about in a moment. So like our previous data model classes, we have to make sure that the name is similar, but you'll see that this is of type gr.dart, and material auto router. Now it actually going to have some replace in route name. So it's going to be okay, not that. So it should be page route, and we have to add the routes obviously. So it's going to be of type auto route. So auto route. Oh, so we have to add the, I think it's added, okay. Page. So we have a landing page. So the first one should be landing page, and it is the initial page, so it should be true. Let's copy here, and which one should not be landing page, and there should be another screen details page dart. So let's just make a sample page. It should be of type scaffold, and it's gonna take a data model in the constructor. Okay, so you'll see how to actually pass the argument. Don't worry about that thing. So let's we have to make a class so that the name does not contain the $sign or the underscore. Alright, so I actually did a mistake over here. I did not add a semicolon over here, and this should be replaced in route name. Let's add a comma over here and save that, and duplicate route names must have the, oh, so I did not actually add the details page, so we don't really have to add anything over here. So you'll see what I'm talking about it, and it's actually saying that there is some kind of an error. So let's stop that and run this again. So you'll see some errors over here, so just import these files over here and the error will go away. And now to use these routes, we have to basically go to our landing page and go over here and import the custom router and auto router, and you can actually directly push with this, like context.router.push, and this is going to be asking for the details route, and you can actually click over here to see what is actually happening. So this is actually asking in the constructor, that is asking for a data model, and if you save that, it's going to take some time as This is the first time loading, and we have to make changes in our main function as well. So let's add router, and there won't be any kind of home, so you have to pass a router delegate. So it should be app router, but we have to make sure that it is actually asking, instantiating a single time. So app router, it's not, should not be of type const anymore, and router, sorry, it should be delegate, and you have to pass another router, route information parser, and app router dot default parser, default route parser, and remove that, and let's restart our application to see everything is working properly. So that's the loading indicator, and the data is loaded, everything is working properly. And if I click over here, it is navigating to the details page, but we did not actually do anything. This is basically an empty scaffold. So you can actually copy every thing to make this page. I'm not gonna type everything over here. You can get the codes from our repository. So you'll have to import the URL launcher as well. So save that and see that this is the image. So let's try to navigate from the home page. Okay, so it is working properly. Now I did not actually implement the URL launcher iPhone. There's need to be some configuration. So now you have to actually add this configuration key to the info.plist. So let's copy that and go to our VS Code, to the iOS runner, info.plist, and let's copy and paste the indentation, save, and rerun the Flutter project. Okay, so the application ran properly, and you can see that these are actually working, and the URL is actually loading. So this is the URL. So basically this is actually working everything properly. So that's about it.